Hi, I'm Jonathan Fields. My guest today is Katherine Preston. Katherine has an incredible story of triumph over something that a lot of people struggle with and explore, and the way that she's approached this journey, the way that she's approached something that a lot of people experience as something that shuts them down in life is really a powerful journey that I'm going to explore with her. So Katherine, welcome so much. Great to have you.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me.
So people are probably wondering from that introduction, what are you talking about? And so let's just dive into it. This was very early in life. You're just kind of hanging out, and you're an average kid, and things changed for you pretty abruptly.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So as everyone can perhaps hear, I have a stutter, and I always kind of had something happening, but it really became something that I was aware of as being something that was strange or something that other people didn't do when I was about 7 years old. And yeah, from that point onwards, I kind of had to work out how to handle being a stutterer.
Right.
And that's, yeah.
So at 7, you have this new awareness of something that in some way makes you different.
Right, exactly.
I've got to imagine at 7 years old that other local kids and people like that may not be the kindest in sort of understanding this.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely true. I think that in some ways I was extremely lucky, and I don't think that I ever kind of had any horrid bullying or anything. I had an extremely strong group of friends who kind of held me up and protected me. However, I have heard of all sorts of people who were bullied, and I think that for me, it was something that was much more internal. I don't think I often had things coming from outside. It was really a struggle that I felt, that I was kind of imperfect.
So as you move through life, this is something that, I mean, did you at any point feel like you wanted to speak with other people who sort of were living with this same experience and compare notes?
Yeah, no, that's an excellent question. I mean, for ages, I didn't want to associate myself with anyone else who stuttered. I don't think I was really I don't think that I had any pride in it. And I didn't almost sort of want to be in that gang. So I distanced myself from the whole thing. However, I got to a point when I was 24. I guess this was back in 2008. And I got to a point when I spent so much of my life kind of hiding it and hiding from it and pretending that I was almost like everybody else. And I just had enough. I decided that I had to face it, that I had to kind of see what this was all about. And so at that point, I had this huge 180 degree shift, and I kind of immersed myself in the whole stuttering world, and I spent a whole year traveling around the country, and I interviewed 100 stutterers and speech therapists and researchers.
Right. So, and actually, I want to go a lot deeper into that whole journey.
Sure.
But you're 24 years old, and you're like, basically, screw it. I need to just kind of own something and do a deep dive and try and figure some things out. What were you actually doing at that point in your life that you then just stopped and went on this journey? What were you?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So I'd always sort of dreamed of being a writer. However, I don't think it's really a career that maybe people take seriously, and I don't think that I kind of felt like it was a real job. So I actually, at the time, I was working in asset management, which
so essentially
was a whole different
banking,
world. Right, exactly. Essentially
which is
banking,
pretty far from being a writer.
which is a huge way from being a writer. And I just was, I mean, it was an exciting job, and I think that some people found it glamorous. However, I felt trapped. I was in this whole kind of 9 to 5 world,
right,
that I didn't really want to be in. I didn't really think that it was who I was.
So that, but it's still a big leap from going from asset management, feeling trapped, to saying, you know, rather than just a shift in careers or embracing the writer in you or something, saying, okay, I'm actually going to completely leave this and take a year and go on a journey and embrace this sort of thing in my life that has always been there and been part of me, but I've kind of pushed to the side because I didn't want to associate it with it. I'm just going to go. I'm going to take a year, leave behind this career, and instead of getting another job, I'm going to do this really deep dive into something.
Yeah, it was a huge jump, and I think that the only reason that I was kind of able to do this whole jump was because I kind of had a breakdown, or not. I mean, that kind of that sounds dramatic, but I got to a point where I was so scared of talking, and it was just so unhealthy. And I got to a point where I had to say that I had enough, and I had to do something different. And I almost felt as if the only way to kind of make this whole thing happen and really create a change was if I jumped in wholeheartedly.
Right.
And I put myself into a huge amount of risk.
Yeah, I mean, that is a huge, I mean, anybody who leads, we've had a lot of conversations with people who've taken big risks and big leaps like that. But this was a big risk, not just financially and career-wise, stuff like this. This was a risk that went much more personal, because you didn't know what you were going to find out about this thing, which has been a part of your life.
Yeah.
And I remember we talked a little bit before, you know, tell me more about the journey. Tell me more about what you were seeking and what you expected to find in the beginning, and then what unfolded.
Yeah, well, I perhaps sort of I set off with this whole kind of image of maybe finding a cure. However, it, through everyone who I interviewed, and I interviewed over 100 stutterers and researchers and speech therapists and families of people who stutter, I ended up sort of realizing that the piece that grabbed me about everyone was how open they were and how vulnerable they were. And I realized that in order to create a book that I was proud of, and a book that everyone would actually read, I had to be vulnerable. I had to be kind of able to be open with my own journey, I guess.
Yeah, and it's fascinating because I'm a writer also. So the last book that I wrote, I started with a personal question, and part of it is, how do you do great things? And more people were telling me that you have to let go of the plan. And meanwhile, I was writing a book in a very formulaic way, and all these people who were world-class creators were saying to me, that's not how great work happens. So it was a similar thing for me where I kind of realized halfway through, okay, all these people are sort of sharing something which is telling me that my initial expectation and plan, that's not what's going to make this valuable for me. It's not going to give me my answer, and it's not going to be interesting for other people. It sounds like in a similar way, this is what happened with your journey.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think that everyone kind of has to have a plan. However, you have to also have room for us. You have to have room for I can't say that word at all. You have to have room for spontaneity to happen.
Okay, let me stop you and ask you a question, because I'm sure people watching this are going to have a question, and I have a question, which is, and it's just completely, when I sit here with you, part of what, I love your story, I love how authentic you are, and I love what you're doing. Part of when you struggle with a word like spontaneity, part of me is asking, how should I respond? You know, and how do I do the thing that's respectful? How do I do, and I don't know if you can see it, but you get a smile on your face when you're sort of working to get one particular word out. So it strikes me that there's got to be a really interesting dynamic just with you in life, with like how people wondering what's the proper way for me to respond to you?
I think that's an excellent question, and I think that actually just asking it is the right way of handling it, because everyone has a whole different way that they want to be reacted to. I would always say that for everyone, just kind of keep with it. I often think that when people hear someone stuttering, they almost want to shut down the conversation, because they either they are uncomfortable, or they think that the person stuttering is uncomfortable. And so I think just to keep coming toward each other is powerful. Also to keep eye contact, to keep just kind of to keep that connection, and to almost to try to see beyond it. To see what someone's actually trying to say. I always think that stuttering has been such a huge gift, because it has always shown me the best in people and the worst in them.
That's just an interesting way to look at it. You know, so in a way, it's like people lay themselves bare in the way that they respond to you.
Right.
So you know who's your friend, and you know.
Yeah, exactly.
I know, because my natural inclination is I'm a helper.
To help, right?
Right.
Exactly.
So I'm like, should I be helping? Like, if I know the word that you're trying to say, should I just say it for you, or is that in some way, disrespectful, or is it?
I think that's always that's always different. I think that some people who stutter, they want that help, and then for me, as a writer, words are so powerful, and kind of having the right word and having the word that I am kind of reaching for is powerful, and that's something I'm kind of holding on to, I guess.
Right. So there's power in your ability to bring the word out.
Yeah. And I think that actually kind of having a stutter has helped me in that it has taught me how to fight and how to always move forward, and how the struggle is always worth it, and all of that good stuff.
Right. And it sounds like, obviously you've come to this place. it sounds like the journey that you've taken, over this 1 year window was also a really powerful thing. I'm curious, can you share some of this? I mean, obviously, like, part of the journey was because there was a book on the other end of it, but it sounds like that was the icing on the cake, the bigger part of the journey.
I didn't have anything.
So this wasn't something where you signed a book deal and you were going out. This was basically you were seeking.
Yeah, exactly.
And you were hoping that something would come out of it that would then turn around and allow you to then also embrace the career that has always been inside of you, which is the writer in you.
Exactly.
And so let's kind of set aside, okay, I'm doing this for a book. Yeah, I'm doing this because I want to learn. There's a curiosity, and I need to go deep into something that I pushed away. Can you share some of the people that you've spoken with in the conversations and the awakenings along the way?
Yeah, my goodness. I mean, there were kind of hundreds of them. Let me think of a really good one. Well, I had the opportunity to speak to famous people, and I was so kind of surprised and so awed by how willing everyone was to kind of to talk to me and to be open. And so, for instance, I interviewed Jack Welch, and
former GE Jack Welch.
Exactly, former GE Jack Welch, and Emily Blunt, the actress,
right.
And Bill Withers, and all sorts of awesome.
And what drew you to those three people?
Well, they all have stutters. They've all kind of been through that journey.
Right.
So that was obviously kind of why, and also I thought that they had really interesting things to say. So, for instance, in talking to Emily Blunt, something that she said that was extremely interesting was that that more than anything, people are willing to see courage. And I think that's absolutely how it is in everything. That if you are kind of willing to kind of live your life on the edge and strive and overcome and kind of be open to being kind of criticized, then people will respect you.
Yeah, and it seems like you maybe even rise up and support you in a way that
absolutely
that they wouldn't have had you had a less challenging journey.
Hugely, yeah, absolutely.
So you spoke to a number of different celebrities who had also, lived with and explored stuttering in their own lives. But part of the journey and part of your exploration was also on understanding the pathology of what goes on. And in the back of your mind, you have this question: is there a cure? Is there one thing? Talk to me more about that part of the exploration for you.
Yeah, well, I mean that's such a huge part of it. The whole kind of science behind it has always been changing, and I think that stuttering has been around ever since the ancient sort of Egyptians, and up until this day, we are still working out kind of why it happens, and they still don't absolutely know, but they've kind of worked out that it has its genesis in the brain, and that it's a kind of a motor neuron that is perhaps firing wrong in our brain. So it has its birth in our neurology. However, it's so affected by how we are every day and how people react to us, and the things that kind of happen over our lives, that even though that's where it began, it changes and it grows and it becomes almost part of you. Mm-hmm. And so I began kind of hunting for this sort of, I began hunting for this, cure. However, I realized at the end of it that I don't want that. At one point, I would have overdosed on a pill. However, at this point, it isn't like a extra, it isn't an extra piece of me. It is me. It's kind of who I am, and I've really embraced it as actually the best part of me. If that makes any sense.
No, it does. I mean, that's a huge shift.
It's a huge shift, yeah,
in
absolutely.
mindset. And since owning that, how have things changed for you?
Oh my word. Well, I became a writer. And I honestly think that that's why. I mean, this whole journey that I headed on, I don't think I had any idea where I was going to end up. However, by ending up kind of by embracing this whole kind of tribe that I was born into, I became more comfortable with actually writing about this whole kind of journey that I've been on, and by almost letting my guard down. And I think in order to be a great writer, you have to be able to experience your emotions wholeheartedly.
Right.
So I think.
Yeah. So it's. I mean, it seems like it opened you to. I guess the message earlier on was a level of vulnerability,
right,
and experience, which we both know as a writer is you have to have, because that elevates what you can craft. It elevates not just the craft, but it elevates what channels through you into the pen or the keyboard, and what you're able to. It brings heart, it brings soul to what you write. So at the end of this, you get to a place where did you start writing as you're going along this journey in your mind? You're starting to write more and more and more and more. When does this turn into a book and a new career?
Well, I mean, after going through all of the interviews and the traveling and everything, I then began to transcribe all of these interviews, and it was almost like being bathed in all of their voices, and it was hard work. How it was also excellent and cathartic in some way. And then I began writing, and I created this whole book of oral histories. And then I tried to sell this whole book of oral histories, and I realized that I found them interesting, but it's extremely hard to relate to a narrator who isn't being open, who isn't being vulnerable. So that's when I then changed it, and I created it into a memoir. And that began to happen at the end of 2010. And at the time, and throughout this whole journey, I had also met my boyfriend, and had had the great fortune to fall in love with him. And he had this whole dream of creating his own business, and I had this whole dream of writing. So somehow I convinced him to come to New York as kind of the heart of the publishing world, and also a great kind of hub in the whole startup kind of world.
Right.
And so yeah, and I just sent out the proposal and the book to everyone, and I had rejection after rejection, and at the end of it I ended up with a wonderful agent and an excellent editor, and
then it was pretty much the traditional publishing route.
And then it went down the traditional publishing route.
So I mean, I love the story, and I love it's sort of this full circle journey. It started out as, and sort of a common theme that keeps coming up with the amazing conversations we have with people is an openness to serendipity, an openness to, you know, like starting with one idea, but at some point just taking the blinders off and saying, this needs to go where it needs to go. And that's definitely been a part of your journey in a really major way. I want to wrap up with one question that I've started to ask a lot of people, and it's a curiosity. It's based around like what this whole thing is about, which is when I use the phrase "good life" in your mind, what does it mean to you to embrace or to live a good life?
Oh my goodness, I would say that it means to live with passion, to be comfortable with being uncomfortable, to be open to spontaneity, to be able to pay the bills, to kind of have enough that you are comfortable, and to create. I think that for a huge amount of my life, when I was working in an office, I didn't have that sense that I was actually creating. And to create, and to either create a book or a business or a family or whatever it is, I think that's so powerful.
Wonderful. I love it. Well, I thank you so much for your time and your kindness, and for helping me also understand a little bit better how to interact, how to engage with somebody who speaks the way you speak. It's great for me to sort of get a window into what to ask and what not to ask. So thank you so much. My guest today has been Katherine Preston. I'm Jonathan Fields. Take care, everybody.